What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Asseto Corsa. I had another starter race in my league. My second race this week on Brands Hatch. First one went not too bad, so I was feeling pretty confident going into this one. We're picking up here right in the middle of my qualifying. I'm showing you these 2 laps. They were my 2 best laps in qualifying. I'm still driving the McLaren 720 GT3 Evo. It's what I used to drive back in the day when I used to race all the time, and it's just what I feel comfortable with, so it's what I'll be racing with going forward. For some reason during the race I streamed it and I had an issue with my capture card or YouTube or OBS or something, and the video is super choppy. So these 2 laps of qualifying are from the stream, and then all of the race is from the Asseto Corsa replay section. So I won't have like all the positions on the left or the track map or the timing up in the top left, but I will have the HUD down in the bottom and my position. And the thing that I wish you could have is the little indicator where the cars are next to you. Also the rear view mirror would help, but got the dash camera. Coming around on my first lap, a 126, a low 126. I can't remember what my time was in my first qualifying, but I know I qualified 28th. So I just wanted to do better than that, and my goal was to get in the top 20. I thought I gave it a pretty good run. I'll let this lap play out, and it's going straight into the race right after the lap is finished. I'll come in throughout the race every time there's a moment and just talk about it. And I have a couple of alternate angles since I had to go back into the replay of all the moments. I have all the separate replays. But that's something I'm going to try to do moving forward. I'll let this lap finish out and enjoy the race. Here we go, coming around the last turn, looking pretty solid. A 125.6 is the projected time. What am I gonna get? A 125.615 is my final time. Good enough for 22nd. Here we go, it's time for the race. It's an action-packed one, like I said earlier, so enjoy. At this point in the race, I'm feeling nice and confident, and all of a sudden feeling safe, braking just a little bit early because I see the mess in front of me and I get absolutely smashed in the back. I might have braked just a little too hard, but I saw the car brake in front of me. I didn't know if he was avoiding something or what. It's unfortunate. And I got some light rear damage from that. You can't see that obviously because we're in the replay, but that's what I got. I got some light rear damage, and it affected the next few laps here. I wish I would have just peeled into the pits right here. Hindsight's 2020, but let's get back to the race. My Xbox fell asleep right here. That's my bad. I fix it in just a second here. Alright, I had enough of the damage. I was pulling into the pits right here, and this is probably my biggest mistake of the race. Before the race started doing my setup, I forgot to add fuel to my pit stop when I came in, and as I was adding fuel as I'm coming into the pits, I overshoot my box entry, and I have to reverse into my pit stop, wasting at least 10 seconds. So it's just noob city over here. I couldn't believe I just did that, and I end up sitting in the pits for like a minute as they fix the damage and refuel my car and change the tires. Me not putting fuel in at the start of the race from my pit stop is what comes up to bite me in the ass for this race. Even though that guy rear-ended me, I still would have messed up the pit, and you'll see in the future what happens. If I remember correctly, this, I think it's an Aston Martin. This Aston Martin in front of me was a lap down from me, and I think he was ignoring blue flags. I'm not 100% sure, but if I'm remembering correctly, he's a lap down, and I get stuck behind him for a while, which was kind of, I mean, it was fine. It's not like it ruined my race or anything, but I get stuck behind him for like a lap and a half, I think. At this point in the race, I'm feeling nice and confident. I am having a great second stint so far. Feel like I had some pace. It's finally starting to really whip it around the track, and I make a boneheaded mistake. Just totally spin out mid-corner, get rammed by the car following me. I mean, nothing really he could do. I spun out right in the middle of the apex. I mean, can't say I would have avoided it. I think I just braked right on the edge of the grass, and it just caused a lot of oversteer. I don't think I got on the gas too early. I'm not sure. Just really unfortunate. I've ruined my second stint and probably the guys behind me. So I end up with some light side damage, left side damage for the rest of the race. I don't think there's any more moments for the rest of the race, so enjoy the last few laps. I forgot about this little instance right here. A little bit of oversteer, and I kind of cut across this guy's line. It's kind of close. I'm not sure whose fault this is. Like I said, I had some oversteer, so I kind of naturally drifted into his line, not meaning to, not trying to race against him or anything. Not trying to cut him off, just, I don't know. Just unfortunate. And then another boneheaded mistake. We both kind of coming to the track at the same time, and this guy just squeezes right through us. No harm, no foul. Alright, this is going to be, or this last lap was my last lap, pulling into the pits to fix my damage. And as you can see on my dash, I have low fuel. I don't have enough fuel to finish the race because of my dumb mistake at the start of the race and not putting fuel into my pit stop strategy. And I overshoot my freaking box once more just to put a little cherry on top. So overall, it was a pretty bad race in my eyes. Started off, like I said, with the poor management on the setup, and the rear end is what really altered my race. I should have pitted as soon as I got that damage to my rear. I end up finishing in 27th, which is actually 2 spots better than my race on Thursday or Friday, I want to say. So overall, I'm going to give myself like a C minus D plus for this race. I expect way better out of myself. If you like the video, give it a like. If you want to see more Asseto Corsa content, hit that subscribe button. I'm doing another starter race this coming Friday, so I'm going to be posting a practice on Nürburgring. So stay tuned for that. My name is Davidoo. Peace.